Hello everybody, my name is Hunter Hero, and today I thought I'd bring you guys a deck that I've been playtesting, kind of tossing around for a little bit, and that is, uh, Invoked Dogmatika Shaddoll Tearlament. This is like a 60 card pile deck. I threw it together because, I've been kind of stumped on what I wanted to play recently, and so I thought this would be a pretty good compromise. I'm trying to finish the Tearlament stuff, but I was just like, I kind of want to play them with what I have, and with what I have is, I have their extra in their main deck just fine. I'm just missing a couple of two Paralinos, but yeah, this pile's a lot of fun. Super high rolling. Like once the ball gets rolling, this deck's really hard to stop. So I feel like going over just the numbers, why I picked them, all that fun stuff. But enough of me mindlessly rambling. This video might take a while anyway. Let's get into the deck profile, starting with the main deck. Starting with our main deck, for our Shaddoll package, we have 3 copies of Wendy, 3 copies of Squamata, 1 Hedgehog, and I just knocked my Squamatas, 1 Aerial, and 1 Beast. So, this package has been taken down quite a bit as newer engines were introduced into the pile. This one took probably the biggest hit. I used to be playing a larger, like 2 Beast, 2 Aerial, this Hedgehog used to be a Dragon, and overall, I think these numbers are fine. As much as I rip on Shaddolls, not being really a full-fledged deck unless you're playing a lot of them, this is already a lot. Like, this deck, for being 60 cards, weirdly draws more than 2 of these on an average hand that you're not just searching, and it feels really off. But you still need the names, they're still really important, and if you mill them off of Tearlaments, you get their effects anyway, and if you mill them with a Tearlament, you get their effects and a way to chain block the tiers. So, the Wendy special sets, Squamata is just every one of these, and also load your graveyard for one of the tech choices we're playing later on. Hedgehog Rotas, this is to help maintain some hand advantage because you bleed it like it's going out of style. Aerial banishes graveyard stuff, which helps not only in the mirror match, but against certain decks, like Sprite, where you need certain cards in the graveyard, it helps keep that graveyard clear. And Beast draws you a card. I'm actually special setting this a lot. I still sometimes miss the second one, but overall these ratios are fine. For our Tearlaments, we are playing 3 copies of Sheeran, 3 copies of Havness, 3 Merrily, and 2 copies of Reno Heart. Reno, I've misread it every time, I swear. So talking about these cards is very, very great. These cards are phenomenal. While they are very high-rolly, and the meta has really shaped to understand this, and these cards are very susceptible to hand traps, these cards are amazing. So, Sheeran, sending a monster from your hand by effect, and then milling 3 cards as a free body is phenomenal. It just generates free advantage, it helps push, and helps resolve some of your Tearlaments. Havness is the quick effect from hand, special summoning yourself to mill 3. And then that's just generally what she's used for. She's helpful for going second because you can activate her on your opponent's turn and possibly floodgate them out of their turn to help set up for yours. Merrily is probably preferred. She's technically a side normal summon, but you never really want to do that. But she is one of my preferred cards in the deck. She mills 3 on summon. She just does that when she's summoned. And then these 3 have the effect to fusion summon using themselves and cards from your hand, field, or graveyard by putting them on the bottom of the deck. So that's kind of how their entire gimmick works if you aren't in the loop. And then Rhino Heart is just walking foolish for them, but he can summon himself from the graveyard if you if he's milled or something by pitching one of the others from your hands. He pitches any Tearlaments card, but we're only playing one other one that counts, so overall, these ratios are fine. I would probably bump this to 3 if it wasn't for the fact that drawing these is kind of a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. So, yeah, that's enough about their monsters. Moving on to our Shaddoll package, which is the second smallest, we are playing 3 Ecclesia and 2 Fleur-de-Lis. I was playing Maximus, again, very early builds of this deck. We're playing a lot weirder ratios. But a certain procurement of a card later on in the list very much changed how this worked. So, Ecclesia wrote as Fleur-de-Lis or Punishment, and Fleur-de-Lis is a negate. That's all you really need to know about these two. Fleur-de-Lis also helps close his games in a pinch. That effect doesn't really come in too much because she's barely on board, but it does come up. Plus, they're lights for Shaddoll Fusion, so... and then we're playing 3 copies of Alistair the Invoker. Wouldn't be an Invoked pile without 3 copies of the best normal summon in Yu-Gi-Oh! This is actually the thing you're spending your normal summon on the most, if you draw it. If you're a good Invoked player, you draw this thing every time with Invocation and Magical Meltdown, but I'm not good at Invoked, so... And then for the thing that basically caused me to cut a bunch of the other stuff in this list, we are playing 3 copies of Edgem Chain. We are playing the Patchwork engine, and that is just because it's just free value. If you mill a chain, you can get more cards in your hand, plus more fusion fodder for some of the other cards we're playing. The extra deck, plus he's dark, so you can make window with him. This card's bonkers. I really hope this card doesn't get hit, but it's gonna happen. I have a gut feeling about it. This is so free. For fusion spells, we are playing 3 Shaddoll Fusion, 3 El Shaddoll Fusion, 3 copies of Polymerization, 2 Invocation, and 1 Instant Fusion. Shaddoll Fusion and El Shaddoll are, I would almost say they are must-haves, at least Shaddoll Fusion at 3. El Shaddoll I have considered cutting a couple of times due to its more limited use case. But sometimes you end with a Shaddoll on board, and without a way to access Schism, having that extra version of Fusion is just always a great way to interact on your opponent's turn. Plus, these are great mills, because if you have a Nadir, you can send any Shaddoll, grab these out of the graveyard for free if you already have the Schism or something. And it just helps keep advantage. Poly, because we're playing Edgems, and we do play Guardian Chimera. I think it's his name. Sorry, I've only owned the card very recently. Yeah, we are playing Guardian Chimera, so this card's basically required. 2 copies of Invocation. Regardless of how many times this comes up, I still think that 2 is always the right answer. I don't want to draw this thing too many times. Plus, if you mill this, or if you mill all your Alistairs or something, you can just resolve Ariel to get Alistair out to just put these back into your deck. There's plenty of ways to keep this thing in cycle, so it's not really dead any of the time. And then 1 copy of Instant Fusion. I have milled this thing more than I've resolved it. But basically, the theory behind this is that you can use it as your first starter play. You Instant Fusion into get Kalos, their level 5 fusion, to get a search or ascend, and then you can resolve Get Kalos' secondary effect without having to use your tiers to make her. If this came up more often, it would be bonkers because it's just free value, but it didn't come up very much, so this card's position in the deck is very much contested. For consistency pieces, we are playing 3 copies of Magical Meltdown, and then 1 Primeval Planet Paralino for our Field Speller lineup. I would love to play more Paralino. That would help affect a lot of the consistency problems I've been feeling with this deck, but I only own the 1, so this is why the 60-card pile exists. I definitely could shave off on a lot more. And then everybody knows Meltdown. It's free. When it comes to deciding between which of these 2 field spells to keep, I always tend to keep Meltdown just because the protection for your tiers is really important, especially if you go tier effect diffuse, make a Kit Kalos. Kit Kalos then dumps 1, which then helps protect the rest of your fusions going forward, which is really cool, but the interaction doesn't come up too much again, but the interactions are what make this deck. And then for other consistency pieces, we are playing 2 Nadir Servant, 3 Patchwork, Terraforming, and Foolish. These cards are phenomenal. Nadir Servant sending Apkalone to get your Schism is great, and it searches your Ecclesia. Patchwork is just so free. Going +1 basically every time, baiting Ashes, just eating all of the interaction for you. This card just... It's so good, man. It's so free. Just like Terraforming and Foolish Burial, these things just eat Ashes for you and help secure some of your further plays going into your combo. So, I probably wouldn't cut any of these. We'll talk about the Dogmatika stuff further on in the deck profile or towards the end, but these cards are all phenomenal. And then we move on to stupid tech choices with 2 copies of Pot of Avarice. The kind of theory behind this is that basically I am milling so much in this deck that if I open one of these, it just turns into Pot of Greed. Kikalos basically just enables this entire thing if your mills are okay but not the best. Resolving an entire Squamata chain just makes these things live. Like, you mill them a lot, which sucks, but like, you're playing 60 cards, and putting your cards back into the deck so they can be used later helps reduce the amount of Shaddoll names you're playing, which is just a huge benefit because you don't want to brick on them. So, yeah. For trap cards, we are playing 2 Schism, 1 Punishment, and 1 Tearlament Meta Noise. So, double Schism, because if you mill this, there's not always the best way to retrieve it back, and you kind of want to draw it most of the time. The 1-off Punishment was something that I debated for a very long time, while, like, theory crafting for this, and that was because it's a form of removal that is really nice this format, but the problem is that it locks you from the extra deck and a fusion deck, and that's why the Dogmatikas have come into contention on whether or not I should keep playing them. They're probably going to get cut in the next rendition of this list. This is probably a deck profile, just like the Scareclaw one, that you'll see a couple of renditions of as we go on into the format, but yeah, I think the Dogmatikas are the first thing to go. Just the restrictions are a little too harsh for what the pile wants to do, and I don't think they're even going to get replaced with a secondary engine. Meta Noise, on the other hand, is really good. Being basically a Book of Moon if you control a tier, or an add back if you mill it, it's great. I might play a second one of these just in case. There's some weird interactions going on. This thing's a great one of in the power builds, but this is a stupid build, so I might just play more of these. But overall, the trap cards were fine, except for Punishment, but here we are. So, for the extra deck, for the tiers, we are just playing the 2 Kit Kalos and the 1 Kaleido Heart. These cards all perform wonderful in play testing. The Kaleido Heart comes up going second, but he's fine in most other circumstances. Meanwhile, the Kit Kalos turns into a Mill 8 if you resolve the combo, where you basically, you fuse her, you dump Merrily, and then you use her effect, sending herself to summon the Merrily. Then you go Chainlink 1 her, and then Chainlink 2 Merrily to try to Mill 8. Which is basically how this deck gets all of its gas, because that sets up your graveyard, that sets basically everything else up, which is phenomenal. I would not suggest playing any more of these. Basically, if you learn how to pilot the deck, these 2 should always be in rotation at any one point, which is how you maintain so much advantage. And the 1 Kaleido Heart never comes up because he can't be used as fusion material, which is terrible, because that means you can't recycle him, which means that you're only basically using him to push. For the other recyclable fusions, we are on 2 Dragos Tapalia. These cards using any fusion monster helps enable our entire extra deck to just continue being free value. Plus, you can basically just loop them and Kit Kalos over and over again with a tier monster, so you always just have Engine. These cards are phenomenal, and their negates that level modulate, which is even better. For our Invoked package, we are on Makaba, Agoides, and Caliga. Now, Caliga was a quick decision on my part due to the fact that we were milling so much. If you mill a tier and Alistair, you can actually put them both back and make a Caliga, which helps stall your opponent and give you time. Especially when they're going first, they don't really have an answer to this that's not just killing it through battle, so just setting up with Caliga, if you mill it on your opponent's first turn, is actually pretty good. Again, other necessary cuts to the extra just made it to where this is the rest of our Invoked package. I probably still wouldn't play the second Makaba, because basically your entire extra can just be fusion one-ofs, except for the necessary recyclers being Kit Kalos and Drago. And you can kind of just keep fueling engine into engine, which is really, really cool. But yeah, so that's it for our Invoked stuff. For our Shaddolls, we are playing really weird ratios. We are playing 1 copy of Construct, 1 copy of Winda, and 2 App Cologne. So, the only reason you play 2 of these is because of Nadir Servant, because you're not always going to be able to put them back, and especially after you're resolving Nadir, the second one of this only comes up in that circumstance, because this thing searches for your Schism, and then you can pitch a guy, but you're under Nadir, so what good is that? The 1-of Construct pains me a lot, but basically, again, the entire purpose of playing 1-ofs is that you can just put these back. And then you can technically win the Kaliga lock if you mill 2 tiers, have an Alistair or a Shaddoll in hand, and then you just put them to the bottom, make Kaliga Winda. And you lock both players out of basically playing Yu-Gi-Oh! The right way. Ultimate Slayer does make this play a lot worse, but it's still really funny in my opinion, so, yeah. We are playing one Nadir servant target, that being Titaniclad. This is also your punishment target. This card does a lot of work for the extra. So you're basically, again, it's a lot of fusion power one-ofs. So this summoning a bunch of Dogmatikas, if you can find a way to mill on your opponent's turn after the restriction is gone from punishment or something, makes this card a lot more live than it really should be. But again, this is probably going to get cut when I cut out the Dogmatika stuff. Just, it doesn't do anything other than just be sent all the time. So we could use a slot for like a redo or something. So, and then for the last fusion spell, fusion monster, we are playing the one of Guardian Chimera. This card is absolutely insane. If you basically end up with any of your bricks on board or just enough fuel to just keep going, this card turns into a plus, regardless of how you go about it. Just because you send all your stuff for fusion materials, you can fusion summon using it. It's so versatile, plus it's protected, so like Imperm doesn't even affect it, and that's something a lot of people are on right now. So this card's absolutely bonkers. If you don't already have one, I suggest you go pick this up. This thing's probably going to go back up higher in price as tier gets more popular. Like, this card is absolutely insane. And then the only Link monster we play in the deck is the Artemis. And the only reason we do that is because we need access to Caliga, and we just opened Invoked Shaddoll. We can just make Caliga construct and just try to make value out of it. So that's it for our extra deck. I will talk about our side deck because this is kind of, again, another really strange place, is that we're playing just a lot of power cards this format. 3 Dark Ruler, 3 Super Poly, 3 Droplet, triple Ghost Spell. This card I haven't sided into. I need to find a better side for it, and I was looking at some other options. So this is kind of your flex spot, just like the other 2 cards in this. Entis and the second window. I basically sided a Dark Ruler, Super Poly all the time. The rest of these spots are really flex spots because I'm still learning the ins and outs of how this deck works. This deck is kind of complicated in a lot of the smaller interactions it shares with some of the other decks in the format, and learning those ins and outs is why this side deck looks as terrible as it does. These cards are all phenomenal in their own right, but with me cutting Dogmatikas, the Entises just don't do anything. The second window doesn't come up at all. It was a mess. Like, the fact that I managed to take 4th today at a pretty competitive locals kind of shocked me with how well the pile did. So, yeah, these are your flex spots. But overall, this deck is a lot of fun. I'm going to just try to move into my closing thoughts. I don't want this video getting over, like, too high over 20 minutes. But, like, this deck has a lot of really cool potential, and people are already starting to crack it with, like, that Turbo Danger build and stuff. Like, and I can respect that. Just until I get my field spells, this is probably going to be the way I play it for a while. You'll probably expect a updated deck list sometime within the next month or so. Sorry, my upload schedule is kind of trash. Like, I'm trying to get better about it. This YouTube and thing's kind of difficult when I'm trying to find motivation for content with everything that's going on. But overall, you guys have seemed to be taking to the last few profiles rather well. Your comments and feedback have been wonderful, and have helped me learn a lot about how my decks work and how I can improve at deck building. Plus, we also got a new camera stand, so you guys can tell me how much you like, if you guys like the new camera angle for these deck profiles, and yeah, but that's really it for this video. I thank you guys for watching this one. Again, questions, comments, just leave them down, questions and comments, just drop them down below. I do tend to read everything and respond. I'm trying to keep up with that as best as I can. So just, but do please bear with me. I am a busy guy after all. I do try to prioritize this as much as I can, though. But again, thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.